How do you make these big life decisions? It seems like there have been a couple, like, going back to podcasts or going to podcasting, going to traveling and photography, starting web companies. How do you make those decisions? Like, this is what I'm going to do.
I don't know. People have often said like, oh, how do you, I don't know. I just like, all right, this is what I'm going to do
It just
now.
happens. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't, I think at least for me, I have to reinvent myself every few years. You have to do something completely different.
Hmm.
I didn't grow up thinking, oh, I'm going to start an internet consulting firm. No one does. Right. So, I mean, it was fine. It was successful. I did well, but it wasn't really something I wanted to do the rest of my life.
Hmm.
Went into academia, did well, realized it was not something I wanted to do. I had the opportunity at that point. I was in my 30s. I had no wife, no kids. I had some money, so I had the opportunity to travel. So I figured, why not? And I just did.
Yeah. So you talked about like reinventing yourself every few years. What do you think drives that? Why do you feel the need to change everything every so often?
Sometimes it's circumstances, sometimes it's boredom. I like traveling, so I decided to travel. When I started my travel blog very early, it achieved a lot of success, but then circumstances changed. And what changed was the internet. I started my blog back in 2006, actually, before social media. There was no Twitter, there was no Facebook, none of that stuff. And my website was my social media. People came to the website, they left comments. And that was slowly killed over time by social media because then people would get your content through Facebook or Twitter or something like that. And then they started putting in algorithmic changes where people who followed you couldn't see your content anymore.
Hmm.
And then you had to pay to get people to see it. And then what happened is all the bloggers realized their traffic was now all coming from Google. So they all just started writing SEO content. And by the time the pandemic hit, it was something I just didn't want to do anymore because it wasn't why I got into this. I could write an article about my thoughts traveling around the world about this place and its history, and that kind of died out because everyone was just writing the 15 best things to do in Las Vegas.
Mm.
SEO content, and I didn't get into this to do SEO content. So when the pandemic hit, and I should say, in March of 2020, within a span of a few weeks, I lost like 95% of my income. Everything that I had going on basically disappeared. All the contracts I had were canceled. Is kind of an act of God thing. All the traffic to my website dried up. All affiliate sales went to zero because nobody was traveling. And I realized that I had to do something else. I couldn't continue to, and I didn't want to either. Like I said, I already had my doubts about where this industry was heading before the pandemic. And it turned out my concerns were really valid because last year, Google made an algorithm change, and most of the travel bloggers I know that stuck with it saw their traffic drop by like 80%. Like it's just killed the business.
Hmm.
So I made the shift to podcasting because podcasting is the one element of the internet that is like it was back in the good old days, where it's not reliant on algorithm. It's primarily word of mouth. And so I just realized this was a good opportunity to do it. Things were bad anyhow, and it would take time. And so I just put my nose to the grindstone and worked on the show.
So before this like SEO phase of blogging, what was the way that you got traffic to your site? Was it just people who already knew you, who were visiting or revisiting, or where did people
Yeah,
come
word
from?
of mouth. There was a lot more blogs would link to each other. They would mention each other. That happened a lot. And then Google killed it because it's like, oh, you can't be doing that linking. That's illegal. And then everyone freaked out and stopped doing it. Everyone became afraid of each other. But back then, nobody cared. You'd have a blog roll on the side of your page, like, here are my friends, check out their website. Or they would mention an article that you wrote. Some people just did roundups. Here are the best blog posts. And a lot of that just died with social media.
What has been the biggest challenge with starting a podcast from scratch?
It takes time. I'm sure you've heard the stat that most podcasts don't even make it to episode 7,
Hmm.
that people just give up. And a lot of people, especially during the pandemic, they were listening to podcasts because they had nothing else to do. So they had this idea that, oh, I'm going to start a podcast. And they eventually give up. And I studied the market a lot before I got into it. I looked at what made successful shows. I looked at reviews for a lot of shows. What Not and you're not really looking for the good reviews. You're looking for the bad reviews. What were the things, then there were two things that always stood out with 1-star reviews. People inserting politics into something that was not political, and too many ads. Those are the two things. And so, I made a decision. I was like, okay, my show is not going to mention politics at all. I'm going to completely shy away from it. There are plenty of outlets for that. I don't need to be another outlet. And I would have 2 ads, and that's it. I was going to put a very hard line. And people still complain about 2 ads. So, but I think 2 is reasonable. The amount of time it takes up is less than the ad load, say, on terrestrial radio or television, and even most popular podcasts. So I sleep well at night. It doesn't really bother me.